Okay, welcome back as we are continuing in Hilchot Netilat Yadyim, the laws of Netilat Yadyim, and we are in the Tzurba, volume 13. We're on page 106, and let's take a look as we start over here. Well, yeah. So let's take a look. Masechet Chulin, Daf Kuf Zayin Amud Aleph, Va'amar Rava. Kol she'ein bo revi'it, any keli, a keli she'ein bo revi'it, a keli, a vessel. You have a cup. It doesn't hold a revi'it of water. A revi'it for us, Sfaradim, the Chacham says is 3.0 ounces or 3.1. According to others, it's 3.6. Chazonish is much bigger than that. But let's just go with 3.1 being that. Okay, so 3.1 ounces. If you have a keli that doesn't have 3.1 ounces, can't hold 3.1 ounces of liquid, ain't no Yadyim. You can't use it to wash your hands. The Gemara says, "Any is this true?" Amarava keli she'ein machzik revi'it ain't no Yadyim. Oh, machzik afagav deleisba. So you're telling me the keli needs to have a revi'it, but I have a statement from Rava. Rava says if the keli can't hold a revi'it, then you cannot use it. But if it could hold it, even though it doesn't have a revi'it of water, then it should be okay. All right. So the Gemara's question is as follows: you're telling me I have to have a keli that holds 3.1 ounces, but Rava said if a keli cannot hold 3.1 ounces, then it's not kosher. But if it could hold, even though it doesn't have 3.1 ounces, it's still kosher. So which way is it? Gemara says like Kashia, holachad, ha letrade. Not a question. It depends if it's for one person or for two people. The Tanya may revi'it notin liyadayim le'echad. You need a 3.1 ounces in the cup water. You need liquid 3.1 ounces in order to pour it on one person's hands. And even for two people's hands, you can use the same 3.1 ounces. Mishum dekato mishari tahara. Because it came from a keli that did have 3.1 ounces, therefore it is still tar. Okay, so the Gemara says, comes from the Gemara says that what? That as long as the keli had at some point, as long as the keli had at some point 3.1 ounces, it has to have 3.1 ounces of water in order to be kosher for using Netilat Yadyim. Now, once it has 3.1 ounces of water, it is kosher for one person to use, and even a second person to use the same exact amount of water. So you need to have 3.1 ounces for it to be a kosher keli to use for Netilat Yadyim. And then once it's a kosher keli to Yadyim, you can use 3.1 ounces for more than one person. Gemara says for two people. How do we understand this case? Holachad, v'holitrei. Rashi says, l'chad revi'it bi'inon mitachila. Aval litrei shaya bo revi'it v'natal harishon. V'ach k'natal hasheni, afagav d'lo hava revi'it v'natil sheni shaper dami. Hayo mishari tahara otek nefarish lekame mei revi'it. So Rashi understands the case as being what? Rashi understands the case that you have 3.1 ounces in the cup, and you have two people who want to wash. So the first person washes, and he leaves over what's left over. And the second person comes and washes from the same cup. And now you have less than a revi'it inside the cup. It is a kosher washing for both. That's the way Rashi understands the case. But in the beginning, before they both started using the same cup, it has to have a revi'it of water prior to being used. Okay, so far, this is what we have. We have Rashi's case of how two people can use one cup. According to Rashi, in order for a cup to be kosher for Netilat Yadyim, you need it to hold 3.1 ounces. But once it can hold 3.1 ounces, it can be used for more than one person. Two people can use a revi'it of water. One uses it, and the second one comes and uses whatever's left over. Because it originally had the right amount, therefore it's kosher to use again and again. Amen. Okay, the Rashba doesn't like this explanation in Rashi and understanding this Gemara. This doesn't make sense. He says, "What? So what does he say?" He says, "Let's say, this is what we said. You can use one revi'it of water to wash one person's hand and then a second person's hands. What case is this? If you're using it after his using it, there's not enough water in it. How could it be enough? How does it work? Yeah, it had a revius of water first, but now it doesn't have. So he's questioning Rashi. Rashi, you're explaining it that one person uses, you have one revius of water. One person comes and washes hands, and whatever's left over, second person uses them both kosher. How could it be? The second guy's using his lesser revius. So what's the case? The yesh loimer, the mari bezeh acher zeh. Uvevad shelo yafsik hakeluach the kal shehu the kal shehu shekilu b'netila. This kula is allowed by netila. Chaim perish Rambam Haramban mashum the havi nitzok chibur. Okay, so the Rashba explains based on the Ramban, the case is different. What's the case? Case is you have 1 cup of water with 3.1 ounces, just enough for revi'it. But you have 2 people who have to wash their hands for Netilat Yadyim. So the Ramban and the Gemara says it was good, right? So the Ramban explains what's the case. This is the case. I wash my hands. I have my hands up here like this, right? And the second guy puts his hands under my hands, leaving a little bit of space, for Amotzi. Okay, and now a third. The way the Ramban explains the case, a third person comes, and he pours the water on our hands, pours it on the top hand, and it goes down to the second hand. Okay, the whole thing. You do it with a little bit of water here, a little water here, little. That's it, and that is going to be kosher. That's going to be good for both. Because why? The pouring is all connected. It's one pouring. It's not that it's used for one and then goes to the second. It's as if there's one big hand there. And so it's 2 hands, 2 people's hands, but it's one big hand. And therefore it's one pouring. The pouring is connected and it goes for both hands. Even though on the second person's hands, less than the revi'it of water is going to fall on it, because some of it's going to be left on the first person's hands, still it is kosher. And that's the case in the Gemara.
Used water.
It's not considered used water because it's connected. It's one wash. It's not that it was used for one hand and then went to the second. It's one long hand, one long wash. That's the way the Ramban looks at it. So let's take a look at page 108. What does the Shulchan Aruch say? So Rashi said the case was one washing it, leaving over something, and the second guy using it. That's good. The Ramban says no. It's 2 people washing with the same water at the same time. So comes the Shulchan Aruch and says. Source 29, page 108. You need to have in the keli a revi'it. That's for one person. But if 2 people come to wash their hands together, the second guy does not need a revi'it. As long as the first cup had a revi'it, the second guy doesn't need to revi'it the water on his hands. Even if it's one after the other. But there should be no pause in the stream. The water has to be continuous. And he explains the case. Ketzad, what's the case? There is one revi'it of water in the cup. Right? So we have 3.1 ounces. And one person spreads out his hands. And another person is pouring the water. Okay, uvasheni, and now a third person comes, upashad yadav lemata mimenu, samach yad harishon, and he puts his hand underneath next to the top hands. Okay, v'kiluach yarid al yado, and the stream goes on his hand shel rishon, v'liyado shel sheni shel lemata mimenu, and goes on the second person. Yedei shenehem taharot, both of their hands are tahar. 2 seems to be only 2. Yeah. I think it works max 2. Alpha P. Shefichat shi'or haravi'it kishehem megi'im li'adov shel sheni. Even though shepachas shear. It's gonna be less than Revi'it. Shehem Magiyim Liyadav. When it reaches the hands of the second, Yadav Taharot Mipnei Shehem Ba'im Mishiurei Tahara. Since it comes from an original cup of 3 ounces, even though the second hand is gonna get less, because some of it's gonna be left in the first guy's hands, still it's tahar. So the Shulchan Aruch so far brings like the Ramban, the Rashba bringing the Ramban. Shulchan Aruch goes like them. Then he brings Rashi. He says the Yesh Matirim Afilu Kishenot Limzeh Acharzeh. Even if they came one after the other, they didn't do it with two hands underneath. Since when they first started, when the first guy used it was Revi'it, and the second guy used it afterwards, even though it had less Revi'it, it's still okay. So he brings it as a Vayesh, as some say that. So so that's the idea. Because the Gemara said you can use Revi'it for two people. So how do you do that? So Rashi said you can use it one after the other. The Ramban's like, but then you don't have a Revi'it on the second guy. That's why it's what? It's one big stream on both hands. So it is a Revi'it for both hands. That's the way the Ramban learns it. Okay. So now, source 30. Mishnah Berurah. He says, first of all, let's say you're washing one hand. Let's say I already washed two hands, and then one hand became not good, and I have to wash it over, whatever it is. I have one hand, Chashom, is in a cast, in a bandage. I can't wash my hand. I have to wash one. How much do I need in the cup? I need half a Revi'it or a full Revi'it? Always Revi'it. That's the first thing Mishnah Berurah says. That's number 67, Sif 67. Sif 60. Okay, next. Then the Mishnah Berurah says what? He says, you know when the Ramban says you have two hands under each other, you know when that works? When you have kavana to do that. That was your plan. Okay? He says, Avim loy kavana, mitchila, the yatsa karishon rakla atma achar pasha hashani yado afilu kaidim shenefsek hakilua, havi kamo notel b'mei rechitzas chaver v'lo alta lo netila. He says, what happens is, I'm washing my hands, I'm about to wash my hands, I'm about to pour, and someone sticks his hands underneath. And the water fell in them. Is it good? Mishnah Berurah says no. It has to be done with kavanah. We have to say to each other, we're going to go wash our hands together now. Okay? Then it works. If you don't have kavanah to do that, it doesn't work. It's as if you're using used water at that time. That's what the Mishnah Berurah says.
Can I just wash? For example, can I just wash with one hand and eat with one hand?
If you have two hands available, no, you cannot wash only one hand because we're scared you're going to touch it with the second hand. That would be an issue. Yeah. Then he says, what happens if you go according to Rashi's Pshat? You go according to Rashi's Pshat, the first person should try to limit the amount of water he uses. So at least there will be some water left for the second guy. And he says, he says, you're in a very special case, you can go like Rashi, because there are poskim who agree to that. That's the Mishnah Berurah. The Piskei Tshuvot says, let's review some of it. Let's make a little summary of what we learned over here. First, he says, the second person should place his hands below the hands of the first, close enough so that his hands are lightly touching the hands of the first person. Okay? This way it's like one long hand. And after that, the first person should pour water on his hands, twice on each hand, or on both hands at once. And also the water pours and descends to the hands of the second. The Netilat works for the second, even though there's not a Revi'it of water going on it, as long as most of his hand gets wet. And at least until his knuckles. Okay, we're going to learn where you have to go, where you have to pour to in a minute, at least until his knuckles. And that's how two people can wash together. He says in the second shot, in the second opinion in Shulchan Aruch, he allows even one person after the other. And you shouldn't wait in between. He says if you're going to go like Rashi, you don't wait in between. He says Yosef washes and then I wait half hour and then I use the water. That doesn't work. It has to be immediate. Right? You have to use it right away. Okay, that's the Piskei Tshuvot. What about for us Sefaradim? What do we do in the end? Halacha l'maaseh according to the Yalkut Yosef. So I put over here the Yalkut Yosef in English. You can open it up and follow along with me. We're on page 177.
Yes, scenarios.
So this is where we could have done this. That's right. We could have technically. He brought enough water for everybody, but if we didn't, I would have said because I was ready to pray this year. So what do we do? Page 177. Okay. Halacha 41 in the Yalkut Yosef. You guys, if you don't have the Yalkut Yosef English, you can just follow along. I'm just gonna say it out loud. If two people need to perform the Netilat Yadyim, but they only have one riv'it of water, it's possible for them to use together. How do they do it? One person should hold his two hands directly under those of his friend, with very little space between them, both having kavanah to fulfill the mitzvah. And then the Yalkut Yosef says, a third person pours it. Because that's what the Ramban said. That's the case the Shulchan Aruch brought. If you paid attention, the Mishnah Berurah Piskei Teshuvot did not say you need a third person. They said the first person can pour his hand and he goes down. All right, Yalkut Yosef, Shulchan Aruch, Ramban all say you need a third person doing the pouring, not the two people who are involved with the same hand. It has to be a third person. So between the three of us, okay? So me and you have our hands next to each other. He's pouring for us. The third person is pouring for us.
No, exactly right.
Say again?
No, nothing.
Okay. A third person then pours the water on their hands. So the water runs over the fingers of the top hands and goes down to the bottom hand, to the second hand. Each one of us make sure that the entire surface area of his fingers, right, from his knuckles up, are wet. Although less than the re'it of water falls on the second person's hands, he nevertheless fulfilled the mitzvah since it came from a keli that had a re'it of water. Both people say al netilat yadayim. They both say the bracha with Hashem's name al netilat yadayim. So here you go. You're on a trip and you don't have enough water. You have enough water for one person to wash their hands. What can you do? Very simple. Three people are there. This is what you do. One person puts out his hands. Second person puts his hands underneath. Third person comes and pours it on their fingers. Okay, make sure they get all their knuckles. All right. And that water goes down to the second hand, right? And it's considered like one big hand, one keli, everything, even though he's going to get lesser of eat in his hand because the first hand is going to keep some of the water. Everyone is considered washed. It's al netilat yadayim with bracha. Okay. Now, what happens? This has to be again with kavanah, we said. You have to intend to do this. The guy just sticks his hands underneath. It's considered used water and it's not considered good. What happens when a third person is not available? Look at note 110. Two people are alone. They don't have enough. So one person should take the cup and wash his own hands. Now there's left a re'it of water. The second guy washes. Who is this going according to? This is Rashi. So Rashi understood the Gemara, right? And it's a netilat yadayim for the both of them. And it's connected. However, in this case, since each person using less than a re'it of water, each one must pour the water 2 times on his hands, once to purify the water. What about the bracha? Where is it? When there's no third person and 2 people perform the mitzvah one after the other, the second person is not to say the bracha. This is because the Rishonim debated whether or not this is a valid method of performing the Netilat Yadayim. And the Ramban said the only way you can do it is if you have a third person pouring the water. So, okay, very good. So, how do we do it when we have 3 people? 2 people put their hands, third person pours it. Everyone can say, the 2 people can say Netilat Yadayim bracha. There's no third person to pour. So what do you do at this time? So at this time, we take the cup, I use it, half of it, okay, and I started with the revi'it. I can say the bracha on Netilat Yadayim because I used the revi'it of water. Even though I didn't use the whole revi'it, I used a keli that had a revi'it of water. Then he takes it, he pours it. It's considered Netilat Yadayim, but he cannot make a bracha. He cannot make a bracha. He can eat bread. He can eat bread. He can make a hamotzi. Okay, he can listen to my Netilat Yadayim, but he's not going to be yotzeh. He cannot say Netilat Yadayim himself because the Ramban said the case is in the Gemara when you have a third. And Shulchan Aruch brought it that way. Even though Shulchan Aruch brought the yesh, there are those who say you can do one after the other. That's not the halacha, and therefore you cannot say the bracha on Netilat Yadayim in that case. According to the Rambam and the Rabbeinu Yonah, there must be the re'it of water for each person. And it's not possible to pour the re'it on two people's hands simultaneously. According to the Rambam and Rabbeinu Yonah, this case of the Ramban that we brought down with the three people, the Meshulchan Aruch brings it down la halacha. Rambam and Rabbeinu Yonah disagree with that. They don't bring it down. Kaf HaChaim says, according to Kabbalah, you always need a re'it of water per person. You can't ever go two people with. But we already know the Yalkut Yosef, and we should pass in this way as well. Is that what halacha trumps Kabbalah when it comes to halacha, and therefore, technically, if you have two people and the third person can pour it on two people's hand with a re'it of water. Obviously, you're not doing this when you have a lot of water. You're doing this in a case when you're on a trip or somewhere where the water is off or whatever it is. You could wash two people's hands with one re'it of water, and both of them can say on a time if the third person pours it. Okay, this is halacha l'maaseh, something good to know. Okay, now we're gonna come. We have a sefer you want to take right here. Yeah, it's good to look inside. We're on page 110 in the Tzurba volume 13. What part of the hand needs to get washed for Netilat Yadyim for Hamotzi? Which part of the hand? So it all comes from a Gemara in Chulin. Gemara Kuvav Amural. Page 110. Source number 32. Tanu Rabbanan. Netilat Yadyim lechulin. When you're eating chulin, means not kadosh food, right? Where do you have to wash till? Ad haperek. What's the perek? Perek means a joint. Which joints? Gemara is not very clear. With truma, you're washing for truma. Where you wash till? Again, haperek. Kiddush Yadayim v'Reglaim b'mikdash. The Hanim are washing their hands and the feet in the mikdash. Where they wash to? The perek. Okay, everyone's washing to the perek. We don't know where the perek is, but they're washing to the perek. Amarav ad kan l'chulin. So Rav was teaching, and he said up until here for chulin. He's pointing to somewhere we don't know where he's pointing to. Ad kan l'truma. Point here for truma. Shmuel Amar ad kan ben l'chulin ben l'truma l'chumra. You have to wash more, both for chulin and for truma. Rav Sheshet Amar kan ben l'chulin ben l'truma l'kula. And Rav Sheshet says no, you have to wash less up until here. No one. So far we don't know where we're washing to. Everyone's just saying wash to somewhere. We're not sure. Amar bar Hedya. Havikamina kamed Rav Ami. But Amar ad kan ben l'chulin ben l'truma l'chumra. You have to wash more. Where till we don't know. Below Tema, don't question Rav Ami from the Kohen who, or maybe Rav Ami was machmer because he's a Kohen. So Ravi Mesha bar Bered Rav Yehoshua ben Levi, who Levi, he was a Levi. Amar ad kan, he said here ben l'chulin ben l'truma l'chumra. So it's not only because Rav Ami was a Kohen, he said you have to wash more. Even a Levi said you have to wash more. Okay, so far we came out. We don't know where to wash. Right? That's what we came out. Now, Rashi understands the perek to be okay. So according to the explanation of Rashi, other Rishonim in the brown box, this agreement is whether one has to wash until the middle of the fingers, the second knuckle, or the perek. Okay, so if you take a look. Go to the back, page 130. You have a diagram of a hand here. All right, so it's going to give you where to look at. I worked hard last night a little anatomy. I worked hard last night to figure out Rashi's shot and the Rif's shot because halacha it makes a difference in halacha how we're going to go. So Rashi says like this. Take a look at it. You see the pink, blue, and the green. Okay, so that's this. This is one knuckle. When I was a kid, I used to break all my knuckles on my fingers. So you break this one, and this one. Okay. You can also break your wrist knuckle. Not fun. Don't do it. But as a kid, he was playing around with that. So Rashi says when it says lekula for the chulin, you can wash less. It means up until here, till the middle knuckle, until the blue. Okay. I wrote on my own sefer over here. Lechulin, according to the kulip shot, you can wash up to here. When it says perek and when it says lechumra, that means until the knuckles, that we mean the big knuckles, which is this part right over here. Okay? That's the way Rashi learns. So when it says lekula, you can wash less, you can wash up to here. So the blue. And if it says leperek, lechumra, it means up to the knuckles. So far, so good. Everyone got Rashi shot. That's the way Rashi learns this Gemara. So according to Rashi, l'chumra, where is the furthest you have to watch till?
Okay.
So your knuckles, as he calls this the parrot. Okay, that's Rashi. Now there are a lot of Gisaot, there are a lot of different versions of this Gemara. The Rishonim had different versions of this Gemara. One of the Rishonim had a different version, was the Rif. Okay, now, I tell you that we're already learning the Tzurba, volume 10, 11, 12, and 13. And I found maybe one or two small errors in the Tzurba up until today. This part that they're going to write in English, this brown box on the top of page 111, they, I believe, made a mistake because I actually looked up the Bet Yosef, the Rif, and everything in the actual source. They're translating it. They're saying, in the end, what they're saying is right. The way they're explaining it is wrong, because they're saying that the Rif's pakak is not the parak, but they're explaining what the pakak and what the parak is incorrect. So let's just take a look at the Rif and let's see what is what. Harif katav braita zo beparak elu dvarim v'hu garis kiddush yadayim v'reglayim ad leparak lechulin ad lepakak. So you wash your hands for truma and kiddush yadayim v'reglayim for the mikdash up until the parak, and for chulin for the pakak. Pakak. So what's pakak? No one knows what pakak is. Okay, so this is what the Rif is going to explain now. So if you take a look, if you want to take a look, and in the end, in page 132, they wrote it right. They wrote the Rif correctly. They wrote the Bet Yosef correctly. They made a mistake in this part, but in the end, they did write it right over here. So the Rif says, pakak comes from the word mitpokekim, which means what? Expanding out. The vertebrae, like in your spine, that stick out, those bones. So he says that's the knuckles. The pakak is to the knuckles. This is likula. When it's said in the Gemara, you can wash likula less, it means until the knuckles, up until here. Not like Rashi, up until here, up until here. And when it says leparak, the wrist over here. That's the way the Rif learns the Gemara. Okay? That's very different. That's the whole palm. That's a whole difference in the palm. And now halacha l'maisa in the Gemara, we read further, they said you should paskin l'chumra. Right? So according to Rashi, l'chumra, washing more is up until your knuckles. According to the Rif, l'chumra is up until your wrist. Okay? So if you continue, he goes over here, the Rosh says it's a chumra. The Rif is saying a bigger chumra. And most people are not knowing this way. But divrei Rambam stumim, the Rambam just says wash until the parak. He doesn't explain what parak is. So it's closed. Nobody knows what the Rambam meant. The Harashba b'Torah Zabayis kasher shekedivrei harav basi. So like the Rif, nir lo ikar. Chater ben Yeruchem shekain nohagu ha'olam. This is the way people do act. Uve'emet says the Bet Yosef shekan roi l'nohag. This is the right way to act. It's not a big deal to wash from the knuckles to the wrist. Kivan the lav milta right? Rav Chizda said it's good to wash with a lot of water, and you'll become very, very prosper a lot that way. So what does the Shulchan Aruch say? Or Yeshakar is saying the Shulchan Aruch? Shin Tiladayim Kol Hayad Ad until the wrist shows Roa. And there are those who say Al Mokum Chibur Ha'etzbaot L'Chaf Hayad. And some say it means until the knuckles, which connects to the palm. And it's proper to do it like the Deos Harishon, the first opinion. So that's what the Shulchan Aruch says. Okay, so we have the Rif. Everyone seems to say we should go like the Rif, and we should wash our hands up until the wrist. Now, what page 112? The Mishnah Brura, right? In his Bir Halacha, Chavetz Chaim writes. He says, and I later found a similar idea in Sefer Atzei Al Mogim. I've shown you that the view of the many great Rishonim, namely the Rif, the Rambam, the Rach, the smag, the riva, the aruch, the rashba. The rule of the Gemara is that one must wash until where the spot the hand connects to the arm. Therefore, it seems to me every person must follow this view and act with the chumrah to wash up until the wrist. And he says, you have to make it tonight. I'm only washing like this up to my wrist as a chumrah and not because it's the halacha. And they make fun. They only wash until the knuckles. They say, you don't have to wash more. And he says it's not right. And they're part of those who embarrass and make fun of Netilat Yadyim. He says, near Linus Daiti, the Samach Lahakel, Al Dat Shnia, Bishas Hatchak, Hishain Lo Mayim, so if a person doesn't have enough water, just has the reveals and just be enough until the knuckles, then he can do that. Okay, that's what the Mishnah Berurah wants to say. And he says today, you should wash it with a lot of water. So the Mishnah Berurah seems to be saying, he's saying that is the actual halacha. And you should wash up until the wrist, and not to the knuckles.
If you don't have enough water,
In a shasat chak case, but it's a shasat chak case.
first today.
Right. So we already went another way. We could have saved water yesterday. People could wash their hands at the same time. Right. We already went through that. Now there's another way. You could have washed them until your knuckles. What? That's shasat chak. Now, what does the Yalkut Yosef say on this? Because remember, here the Mishnah Berurah said, "Don't make that tonight that I'm only washing." So what does the Yalkut Yosef say? So you have the English edition of the Yalkut Yosef there. I put it on the table. If you turn to page 86, turn to page 86. Turn to page 86. 86. Sure, halacha 16. Making Netilat Yadyim, you have to wash up until the wrist. Some say only up to the knuckles, but recommended practice, wash until the wrist. Right? So far, said no differences here. If someone decides to make his regular practice to wash his hands up until his wrist, it is best that he make it tonight. Not like the Mishnah Berurah. This is the wrist right here. Okay. So he says to make it tonight that he's only doing a chumrah as a voluntary practice, and that's not the halacha. Therefore, in the future, if he needs to wash up until his knuckles, then it'll be no problem. Because if you think that the halacha is to wash up until your wrist, then if you don't have enough water, you can't wash up until your knuckles. Because you're saying the halacha is to wash up until your wrist. Therefore, make that tonight. And you can ignore it whenever you don't have, whenever you can't. And he says, do it anytime you take a chumrah, you should always make such a tonight. He says here on the bottom in note 18, what happens if a person didn't make that tonight? He's always washing till his wrist. And today he can't wash until his wrist, he wants to wash until his knuckles. Someone found himself in a situation where it's not possible for him to wash his entire hand, but he never made it tonight. He may not be lenient, even this once, unless he makes hatarat nidarim. Since he knew that he was making a strictancy, he knew he was going l'chumrah, and he didn't make any such shnai, then he is bound by it until he is released by it. If he thought until today, he thought the halacha was like that, but now he found out that you can wash until your knuckles, then he does not need to make hatarat nidarim.
Supplies for morning and
We're talking about Netilat Yadyim for hamotzi, but I would assume the same applies there because on Yom Kippur, on Tisha B'av, where do we wash until? Wash until our knuckles. We don't wash.
that's why I'm asking why didn't do that? You do.
All right, so why you don't need anything?
You're doing already. So why do I need that?
Because here you're going to eat bread afterwards, after washing your hands.
Why not kamina?
Why not kamina?
You said
In order to be Yotze Netilat Yadyim for the bread. When I wash my hands in the morning, I just need to wash my hands from the Ruach Ra. I'm not doing anything afterwards. It's not like I need a reshus. This is a bracha for a reshus, right? A reshut to do something. It's a bracha to get permission to eat bread with my hands. In the morning, you don't need permission to do anything. You're just washing your hands from the Ruach Ra. So that's possibly the difference.
is when I do something and
To get reshut to do something, right? Something is also for me, and now I need reshut. Or I need permission to do something. You don't need permission to do something in the morning. You're just getting rid of the ruach ra. It's different. I see it differently. I mean, we can argue on it, but that's the halacha over here. Okay, so now you know what to do. Let's say a person didn't have enough water to wash up into his wrist, and he washed them to his knuckles. Can he say the bracha on Netilat Yadyim? Of course, he's yotze, right? And the Beit Yosef seems to say that it's really up until the knuckles, but the rif was l'chumra. We should go like that because Rav Sheshet would pour it a lot. So the halacha technically is up until the knuckles. So not like the Mishnah Berurah that wanted to say that what the halacha is really up until the wrist. We hold the halacha is really up until the knuckles. Okay, good. So far, so good. Let's move on. Let's move on. Okay, this is this next case. Shulchan Aruch says, Mish Arim Besuda v'Niska Shinaga v'Shok v'Yerech u'Mekamas, and the places Hamachusim ba'Adam. A person touched somewhere that is usually covered over his thigh. Someone touched something that's going to make his fingers tummy, and he might need to wash again, right? So what happens at this time? We're going to see the halacha l'maisa, so we don't do that. So someone washed his hands. He ate bread. He ate. He's in the middle of the Seudah. And now he touched someone where he shouldn't. So Shulchan Aruch says, go wash your hands again and make a bracha. I'm reading it right here. Second bracha. You touch it again, you wash your hand, you say bracha again. We're going to see. Actually, the Rav David Yosef and the halacha, that's the halacha Berurah, right? He brings down you, yes, even you still say the bracha today. We're going to see Chamavadi did not say to do that, and we'll get to it. Let's just go through. Now, the question is, Rav Menashe Klein, in his Shalosh Tshuvos, Mishnah Halachot, he says, let's say, in the middle of the Seudah, and I touched somewhere I shouldn't, but I'm not going to eat bread again. I'm going to eat other things. Celery, cucumbers, fish, meat. Usually I don't have to wash my hands for this, but I'm during the Seudah. Do I have to wash again? Right? Do I have to wash again? So he says as follows, regarding the question of one touches a concealed area in the middle of the meal or is distracted in a manner that requires him to perform Netilat Yadyim again, whether he is forbidden from eating other foods that do not require Netilah, or whether it's specifically bread that he's forbidden from eating before washing his hands, but other foods he may eat. So what's the halacha? That's his question. All right. So let's see. So he wants to bring down his first source to try to answer this. He says, page 114, Shulchan Aruch says, someone needs to daven mincha or aravit, and he's in the middle of a seudah, right? Praying in the middle of the seudah is not considered a hefsek, right? You don't have to say new brachot. You just continue eating afterwards. Okay, so it's not considered a hefsek. One remembers in the middle of his meal that he did not pray and stood up and prayed, even if there was not enough time to finish his meal and then pray and complete the tefillah for a deadline, in which case he is obligated to interrupt and may not eat until he prays. Nonetheless, this does not count as a hefsek of the meal. Based on this, the Mishnah Halachot wants to say, we also see on Pesach at night, we say the bracha of Hadamah on Karpas. And then we do not say the bracha of Hadamah on the Maror. Why? We say the bracha on the Karpas goes on the Maror. That's why we say have kavanah. While you're eating the Karpas on the Maror, on the Maror. Well, we made a big hefsek in between. We read the Haggadah.
What difference does it make? We don't need to make a move. I try it. I don't know. I understand.
It's more a part of the meal. It's something that you usually eat with the meal. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's not.
Cucumber, vegetables. It's not fruits or dessert.
But let's say. Okay. So he says, what do you see here? You don't make a hadamah again on the Mar. So the bracha is good. But you have to wash your hands again. Because we do wash our hands again. We wash our hands by karpas. Yeah. We don't wash our hands again for Mar. So the bracha is okay, but you have to wash your hands for hamotzi. You have to wash again. Why the 5 plus washing is not enough? I already washed my hands. That's because for washing, it is considered a hefsek. But for the bracha, it's not considered a hefsek. That's what he wants to say. Okay, you can read it here. He goes through the whole thing. He says since he needs to recite the Pesach story and sing Hallel, his mind is distracted. Still, it's obvious that even though we require it to the dime due to distraction, regarding the bracha, he does not recite another bracha, and he may eat things that do not require Netilat. So, hold on. Let's just deal with this. Don't confuse me, because this is a little hard to get through. So he says, so he wants to say, the Mishnah Halachot wants to say, it seems that it's permissible to eat all other foods. It's for Netilah, I need Netilah again. But for everything else, the bracha still means I can eat everything else. That's what he wants to say. So he says, if I touch somewhere in the middle of the meal that I need to wash again, I can eat other food as long as I'm not eating bread. That's what he wants to say. But then he brings the next Shulchan Aruch, source 40. Shulchan Aruch says, Hayom Mesubim Besuda. The person went to use the bathroom. He has to wash his hands that he used to wipe himself. He has to wash in front of everybody, so no one should think he didn't wash. And this is to drink. So Shulchan Aruch said, if you go to use the bathroom, you need to wash your hands in the Netilat Yadyim in order to drink. But if you're going to eat, you can wash outside. No one has to see because everybody knows if you're going to eat, you're going to wash your hands in the Netilah. And the Ramah says that the husband in Netilah is shtia. Once you eat in the middle of the Suda, you have to wash your hands again. So says the Mishnah Halachot, Ramesh Chaim wants to say that what? That no. You have to wash your hands again, even if you're going to eat any other food in the middle of the meal. So if you touch something in the middle of the meal, you have to wash your hands again. Even if you're not going to eat bread again, you're going to have to wash your hands again. Now, what about the bracha? He says over here, look at the brown box on page 115, about 3 lines from the bottom, 4 lines from the bottom of that brown box. Despite this approach, common practice is to follow the approach of the Maharshal that's brought in the Mishnah Berurah and other Achronim, who hold the bracha al Netilat Yadyim is recited only once over the course of the meal, even in these situations. So there's a Maharshal that says that you do not say the bracha again. This is also the approach of Shulchan Aruch Harab, the Kaf HaChaim, Piskei Tshuvot. So let's see what the Yalkut Yosef has to say on this topic. You can turn in the English to page 217. Yeah, it's all over the place here. Okay. Page 217. If someone touches his skin under his clothes during the meal, he must perform Netilat Yadyim again in order to continue eating. The Chalpach applies someone who touched any part or even scratched his head. It also applies someone who relieved himself during the meal and touched any part of his body that's normally covered. Then he says, page 218 on the top, you have to be fast at it. You don't have to be American. You have to be fast. Okay, it says, and then he says what? The blessing of Al Netilat Yadyim is not repeated. He does not repeat it. This is the ruling in the ruling of Moran Shulchan Aruch is the blessing is repeated, and anyone who wishes to follow the Moran's ruling has what to be Saimechan. Okay, and you look at note 157, he brings that the Shulchan Aruch said you have to say a bracha again. Rav Shalom Luria, that's the Maharshal, he says that what? You don't repeat it. Okay? The Kaf HaChaim and the Yalkut Yosef rule that although the Moran ruled that you have to repeat it, we say Safek Brachet Lahakel and we don't repeat it. And then he says Halacha Brura, page 312, says no. Shulchan Aruch says you can say the bracha, then you say the bracha. So we come out a little confusing here. The Yalkut Yosef seems to be saying you don't say. It's Kaf HaChaim says we don't say. the bracha again. You have to wash until time. You don't say the bracha again. Halacha Bara, based on the Shulchan Aruch, wants to say you would say the bracha again. Most people that I know do not say the bracha again. Right? Most people go like Mishnah Berurah, go with the Kaf HaChaim, and do not say the bracha again. We're always very careful with saying brachot. We don't want to say it
People
again.
wouldn't touch it where they're not supposed
Right,
to, so they don't come to that.
Right, but even they use the bathroom now. People go to the bathroom in the middle of the Suda. You have to wash your hands again until Yadyim. You have to wash your hands again until Yadyim.
We do that in Tila, that's what it's you don't need to.
But for Ashet, you don't really have to wash with the tefillah. Just to wash under the sink. Right? So but we're saying that you have to wash the tefillah. It's going back to the Suda
Without the bracha.
without a bracha.
I need to use the cleat.
Yeah. Washing to Yadyim for Suda. Right? When he says washing again, it means what? Washing with the Suda. I'm assuming that's what he means.
Just wash and then wash for another time.
No,
the
it's
keli?
Tila.
And Tila.
No. Once I want to wash my hands. Good.
You can wash your hands with soap and then wash with the keli again. That's what he seems to be saying. Changing diapers. Someone touches a baby's skin where it's usually clothed. He must then repeat Netilat Yadyim in order to continue eating his meal. There is someone changes the baby's diaper during the meal. He or she must repeat Netilat Yadyim. He says, but if the person's only going to go eat fruits or drinks like that, he's supposed to make Netilat Yadyim, but he shouldn't say the bracha. Even according to the ones who say you should say the bracha. So that's what we come out. So we come out. Very important halacha. Halacha l'maisa. You're eating a suda, and you touch somewhere you shouldn't have under your shirt, under your garment. You went to change the baby's diaper. You went to use the bathroom. You have to wash it. We don't say a bracha with the marshal, with the keli, yeah. And you wash your hands again. Playing with the kids. They're touching somewhere you shouldn't touch. You change your diaper, yeah. You're touching somewhere that's usually covered. You touch their hand, no. If you touch a place that's open, no. If you touch your own face, you touch your own hands, you don't have to wash
Making
it.
a massage, you stick your hand inside.
It's a problem. You're going to wash your hands again at the Yadyim. Then you're going to have to wash again. Netilat Yadyim. Okay? Came out with a very important halakha. So let's move on to the next thing. These are all such practical halachot. And some things that people just don't know. We don't know. We don't pay attention. We're not. No. So let's see again. Let's see the next halakha. What about I don't have water to wash with? What do I do now? Okay. And some people take their sandwich and wrap it up in a napkin and they're good to go. We're gonna see doesn't work.
No?
Now we're gonna see how it works.
If you can't get any water 18 minutes or whatever.
Right. But you heard what I said, wrapping your sandwich in a napkin. No, that won't work.
Right.
You have to wrap your hands.
Either way.
No, it's not either way. We're gonna see now. Okay. Gloves is fine. I guess let's take a look. If they ask, what is it? Can I eat with a mappa, with cloth, not touching the bread? Are we scared that he's still going to touch it or not? They only let Kohanim use a tablecloth in between them and their food, a handkerchief between them and their food, but not other people who are eating taharot. Okay, so says Rabbeinu Yonah. You're right, we don't. So says Rabbeinu Yonah, Hatir Mapal Ochlei Truma. The Kohanim zrizim him. The lo yagiv apad. Kohanim are very careful. So if we let them eat, then they'll be careful and they won't touch it. The Gziran Dilma yagiv apad. Maybe he's going to touch the pas. But near the kol shekain, the sharbini adam. See, the Rabbeinu Yonah says, even if you're not eating regular food, not Tara food, you shouldn't. You cannot eat with a handkerchief. Where even any fruit they're gonna dip into it, you can't until you wash your hands. You cannot use cloth in between. Rabbeinu Yonah says no cloth for us. Can't do it. Rambam. Lat adam et yadav b'mapa. A person may wrap his hands in cloth. That's what the Shulchan Aruch is going to go with that lashon. You have to wrap your hands in cloth. Avaychel behen pas odavar shetibulu b'mashke afapi shloi natal yadav. Even if he has not washed his hands. Okay, so the Rambam says wrap your hands in cloth, and you're good to go. The Bet Yosef brings down as follows. He says, it seems from the Rambam that the Rambam says when the Gemara said we do not let non-Kohanim eat with a handkerchief, that's only for Taharot. Right? But for Chulin, it's not the case. Since they require it till the dime, the whole reason why the till the dime is there because of Truma, Srach Truma, right? Like Gazrubahu, Tapei Truma. So we're not going to add on more Giseros. So the Rambam, that's what he wants to explain the Rambam. The Rambam says, you know what, you can wrap your hands in, because today we're not eating Tahar stuff. When it comes to Tahar, things a different story. The whole Netilat Yadayim is compared to Truma, so let it go. Right? We're not going to make extra things here. He says it's a het. Now there's one more, Rishon, and brought down in the Beit Yosef, and this is the Aruch. The Aruch writes, as we turn the page, he writes, Netilat Yadayim, that's what Tzion brought up, Daled Milin, Shem Yesh Lefana Berchoik Daled Milin, Mayim, Lo Yachal Ad Sheyigia L'Mayim V'Yitli Odom. V'Hani Mil Dominion Daled Milin Lefana. Aval Le'achar Afilu Mil, Ein Matrichan, O Tel L'Chzar, L'Chazar. Elo Eichel B'Vli Chamatot V'Lo Netila. He eats with B'Vali Chamatot and no Netila. And what does B'Vali Chamatot mean? Shalat Yodav B'Mach. Okay, so the Aruch brings down this din. The only time you can wrap your hands with cloth is if there's no water in front of you, Daled Milin. Okay, and we have to deal with Daled Milin. What is a mil? Is a time, is a distance, what exists? We'll deal with it in a minute. But if you don't have in front of you water, Daled Milin, then you can wrap your hands with cloth. And if you're going backwards, then it's 1 mil. Okay, let's take a look at Shulchan Aruch, source 46. Shulchan Aruch goes with the Aruch and says, "In ein mayim nitzuyim lefanav berachok yotzim arba milin v'lachrav b'mil." There's no water in front of you 4 milin, and no water back of you, traveling backwards. Yitol yadav v'mapa v'achol pat. He wraps his hand in a mappa, and then he can eat his bread. Odavar shetivulo b'mashke, or something that you dip into water. The Ramah brings ochol al yedei kaf. He can use a spoon. Okay, we'll have to deal with that in a minute. Okay, so far, what do we come out with? You have to have water in front of you or in back of you. If you have water, you cannot wrap your hands. You have to go and get that water. Okay. Now, what is this distance? So the Mishnah Berurah says we assess this according. What do we assess this to? Do we use the distance of a mil? A mil is a certain amount of distance. Or is it the time to travel a mil? Why would it make a difference? Why would it make a difference? If you're walking, a mil takes about 18 minutes. But if I'm driving now, a mil will take me 2 minutes. Do I still have to travel 18 minutes? Backwards? Or I just go the amount? So the Mishnah Berurah says, when it comes to water, guys, I skipped to another Mishnah Berurah. Okay. Yeah, I skipped to the next source 49. So I'll go back to 47. He says over here that they permitted him wrapping his hands only if there's no water in front of him and no water in back of him. And the same is true if he's unsure he'll find water. Let's say I'm not 100% sure. So then it's okay. And also if he's hungry, right? So I'm very hungry. I have no water. Maybe I'll find in front of you. It's okay. Wrap your hands in cloth. Yalkut Yosef, English edition, page 209. Page 209. When water is available, it's forbidden to wrap your hands and eat bread. You must wash them when water is available. That means water in front of you, water in back of you.
What is the distance we said?
Okay, we'll deal with that in a minute. In order to eat bread without pouring lime, it's necessary to wrap both hands. Page 211. Well, we can deal with that in a minute. Wrap both hands in a cloth. Even if the person plans to eat only one hand, because we're scared he might touch it. Right? That's right. Hands are always busy. That's the only reason we have to wash them. Right? So now, if you hold the halacha is up to your wrist, you're gonna have to wrap your hands up to the wrist. If you hold the halacha is up to your knuckles, then you only have to wrap up to your knuckles.
This is not attack anyway. So, but
Still,
we're already going with it. So
still, wearing gloves is okay. The Ramah said you can use a spoon or a fork. We'll deal with that in a minute. What did I bring down? Halacha 1, 4, 8, and 11. 8. If someone became hungry and he's not sure if he's gonna find or not, he can wrap his hands and eat.
By wrapping with nothing as done. Just saying I'm gonna enough.
Yeah, you're not making it to that, right? And then in 11, he says if it's a dangerous place and you need to eat, just eat. Wrap your hands and eat them. Okay, now, what happens if a person is home? He's not traveling. I'm not on the road. I'm not going backwards. I'm not going frontwards. I'm staying home. There's no water. Shut down. Okay, I have no water. I'm home. Do I still have to go 72 minutes out, or is any other way considered backwards? No one has water. So I have to travel 4 mil or 1 mil. Okay. He brings over here. Yershami says that a watchman of gardens and orchards is considered like one who's traveling backward. This implies that anyone who's home must go 4 mil, says the Magen Avraham. The Magen Avraham says if you're home, you have to go 4 mil. Because you're not watching anything, you're just home. So you have to go 4 mil. Mishnah Berurah says no. Chayadim and Acharon agree that anyone who's at home only has to go back 1 mil. It's like going backwards. It's always considered going because you're home, you're not traveling. You only have to go.
Because technically you're going 2.
You're going what?
2. Because if you're traveling 1, you got to come back home.
Right.
2.
Right. So you only have to go 1. Now, in the box he deals with over here, the measurements of 1 or 4 mil. Does this refer strictly to the distance or does it refer to time? If it's based upon distance, and if you're traveling a vehicle, right, it's very quick. It's a few minutes. If it's based on time, you'll still have to drive further. The Bir Halacha writes, this is the Chafetz Chaim, one calculates a mil based upon time. So if it works, if a mil walking is 18 minutes, you have to walk 18 minutes backwards to find, you have to drive 18 minutes backwards to find a place to wash. And it means forward, you have to drive 72 minutes forward before you can wrap your hands in cloth, unless you're very hungry. Okay, different story. But take a look in the Yalkut Yosef, and he says on page 210, if someone is traveling, has no water with him, and he wishes to eat, and he wrap his hands in cloth and eat bread without performing Tzilah in 2 conditions. 1, that according to his estimate, he would continue traveling on the 4 mil. Now a 4 mil is 2.4 miles, which is 0.6 of a mile per mil. 0.6 of a mile for 1 mil. 4 mils, 2.4 mils. If he figures that he would find water, then he cannot eat. He has to wait. Okay. Now, what is the definition of a mil? He says as follows. It depends on time. That means if you're driving or you're traveling, you have to go 18 minutes backwards in the car, driving 18 minutes back to find a rest stop to wash your hands. And you have to go 72 minutes forward in order to eat without washing. So you think about it for us, like I was driving up to the Poconos for midwinter vacation. You really have no excuse not to wash your hands because there's rest stop after rest stop. There's you don't have a rest area, you have gas stations. You have McDonald's you can step in and then wash your hands in. You can wash them to any of these restaurants. You can use their bathrooms, right? They open it to the public. You can go in, right? Now washing in the bathroom, whatever is another issue. You have a keli and all that, fine. But there are sinks. So you really don't have a heter to eat in the car without washing your hands. Because you can stop. People stop. People, okay, if you have Mizorah, you're out of problems. But say you have to wash your hands for a motzi. You really don't have a way out. And people stop. I'll tell you this. Since now that I'm a family man, right, Baruch Hashem, I used to be able to drive 6 hours straight, 7 hours straight without stopping. It doesn't work anymore. You're a half hour in, everyone has to use the bathroom now, right? And you find the bathroom, right? You'll find the Marshalls, you'll find the Century 21, you'll find something to go to.
In a restaurant.
Right, yeah, that's right. So we were going, and everyone had to use the bathroom, and I'm in Manhattan, right? And I'm trying to go to the George Washington Bridge. So I got off. I got off the highway, and I said, we're just gonna drive around. We'll find somewhere to stop. And I saw there was a big Marshalls department store over there. So Marshalls has to have a bathroom. So I went into the Marshalls, and it was everything's written in Spanish there. I guess it's a very Spanish area. They watch the nights. And it said Banos. So I went to the Banos, and they had it under a key. You had to punch in a code to walk into the bathroom. So I just came there, and some worker came and says, "Oh, what is it?" I said, "We need to go into the bathroom." So they put the code in. So the girls went in, I went in, everyone was in. we parked our car illegally, came back, everything was okay. But you have to do, you have to use. So you see, you could stop. So there's really no head there to eat without washing your hands, unless you're very hungry or you're in a dangerous area. These are already, we spoke about these heterim. Now, right, and this is the Bir Halacha about the flying camel, which is a train and stuff like that. You go according to time.
Flying camel?
Yeah, it's called the flying camel. It's something that moves fast. Vehicle or train or something like that.
So what does it have to do with flying camel?
That you go according to time. Pisketshua says, Meshach Zman Nesia Shel Arch 72 Dakot Yochol Lasig Mayim Chayev Lahamatin. You have to wait, and you have to go backwards. You have to go backwards 18 minutes. You have to travel. You have to drive
Forward 72.
Yeah.
Backwards.
So whatever the speed limit is, you have to go 50 miles per hour. It's 18 minutes to find it. 60 miles per hour. 18 minutes to find the place. Okay, what about the spoon? Right? The Ramah said you can also use a spoon to eat the bread without the washing. So Mishnah Berurah says that Chronim found this difficult. Where did the Ramah come this? Where did the Ramah come to the spoon? Wrapping your hands guarantees you're not touching the bread. Using a spoon, okay, spoon, fork, whatever it is, utensil. He says the Eliyah Rabbah was able to explain it. He says the Eliyah Rabbah was able to explain it with much difficulty. A Yeshu b'dochoik. He says, therefore, he says, if you have a handkerchief, use the handkerchief. If you have cloth, something to wrap your hands in, do that. Don't rely on the spoon or fork. Page 211, the Yalkut Joseph page, halacha 6. According to some posting, eating with a fork and spoon is considered the same as wrapping. In practice, however, one should not eat bread when he doesn't wash it the other time, unless one wraps one's hands in cloth. If there's no water or cloth available, only then may someone eat it using a spoon or a fork. So he gives you a heads up. If you really have nothing else, then you can use a spoon or a fork. So we see that you really have to wrap your hands. Really have to wrap your hands. What about wrapping the food? Okay. Look at halacha 7. Look at halacha 7. You're on page 212. Even when there's no water available and it's permissible to eat bread by wrapping one's hands, it's forbidden to wrap the bread in cloth or a plastic bag and eat it with bare hands. You have to wrap your hands in it and not the bread.
I always do that.
And I'm telling you,
bag to cover the bread.
Yeah.
רק באופן שיאפשר לו כלל לכף מפה על ידו ולוש בתקרות, לא שיכול לפעול על ידי שעות מפה או בניילון. He says only if you have no other way. You have no other way, then you can do that. But wrapping it up in something like that. Right? He says based on the Kapachayim, right? So we came out with a lot of halacha l'maisa things over here. First of all, you have to travel, and you have to travel far to find water. Okay. You have to travel, you have to follow at least 72 minutes, and this means in your vehicle, if you're traveling in a vehicle. If you're not traveling in a vehicle, it's on foot, then you travel on foot. Whatever you're traveling, it's the time, not the distance. And if you really don't have water, or if you're hungry, or you're in a dangerous place, you don't have to go all that distance. You can right away eat, but you have to wrap your hands in cloth. And if you don't have cloth to wrap your hands, then you can use a spoon or a fork. And if you really don't have anything, then you can wrap your bread in it, but better not to do that. Okay,
Not wrap in the bread. Open it and put it
on your hands. That's the best
Make
way.
a box of gloves in each
How you put that-
Gloves are very good. You have to use a handkerchief.
So you see how it's more convenient if you take the bread and put it
Convenient,
inside.
yes, but not good
No,
la'alacha.
but look at this.
I agree with you.
You're not gonna
But
do
I'll
that
tell you,
tonight.
when you eat like with,
See how he's doing it?
I've seen people
The-
eat.
You put the bread inside and then you.
I've seen people eat
Fold
with holding the bread with a napkin, and what happens? Halfway through, the napkin comes this way, napkin comes that way, and they're already touching it.
And definitely, if you put it on the hand, it's gonna be going on the.
No, but if you take a handkerchief and you wrap your hand in it, it's not going to touch
No,
anything.
he just said you. This is
Ah, if
gonna
you do it in there,
be.
it's a problem.
No.
No. Yes.
You have to separate because you cannot touch it.
Right. When you're eating, you have to have your hands in the tefillah the whole time.
They're not gonna wash the hands.
What?
And now they're not gonna wash the hands.
Oh, no, that's only by the avad. If you have water, you're not allowed to wrap your hands. If you have water, you're not allowed to wrap your hands. It's only if you don't have water. Okay, fine. That comes to halachot. What about women in the Netilat Yadyim? The women have to wash the Netilat Yadyim. The Ben Ish Chai
They
says
don't need to. They go to the mikveh.
for bread.
Ah,
If Netilat Yadyim who ben al hanoshim, and he says of anotenu harabim, and in our many sins, yesh kama noshim she'oichlin below Netilat Yadyim. There are many ladies. The Ben Ish Chai writes that in his time are eating without Netilat Yadyim. The ein markshim and they make it like a heter. Some women think because I don't want to make Birkat Hamazon, right? I don't have to make Tzilas Yadayim. I'm not going to make Birkat Hamazon. I don't have to watch Tzilas Yadayim. But Tzarech LaHodiyam, you have to explain to them. That's not like that. Tzarech Adam Lashgiach Al Bnei Beito, the Davar Zev LaHodiyam, Chomer Hadavar Vizarem Tamid, the Gami Chanechi El Adav, Tanah Pisha Loibo, Chal Chiyuv, Kideshi Agalo Bekach Mikanotav. You have to teach them ready from little kids in order to wash their hands for Netilat Yadayim. So women have the same exact din as men and Netilat Yadayim. How much time we have? Okay, so we'll end off with this. The machshava he brings down here is that we have to turn everything physical into a spiritual, and that's the whole idea of Netilat Yadayim. But I just want to mention is something interesting that I noticed. Maybe people notice it too. Maybe people argue. I don't know. We'll see. But I see that a lot of times when it comes to women in mitzvot, like mitzvot that they're not supposed to be doing, they jump on it and want to do it. And the mitzvot that they're supposed to be doing, they disregard it. Right? So it's a very interesting phenomenon. You find that over and over again in the world. The mitzvahs that they're in the mitzvah in, they're not doing it, right? So they're not doing it correctly. And the mitzvahs that they're not mitzvah in, all of a sudden they want to do it, and they want to do it more. Right, but more so by the woman. More so by the woman. Right, and others. Okay, we'll end here. It's a beautiful share. As Hashem, next week we will continue.
אבי חיים הגשם ויצא הקדוש ברוך הוא לזה גדול ישראל, לפי רבה לא שנאמר, אדוני חפש וזכור